Hi, I'm Nick Sivgolis, owner of Family Canine Dog Training, and this is my bulldog Cow. We love to hang out together. Cow loves to be on the couch, and we've spent more time on the couch together in these last few months with COVID and everyone being home than ever before. And she's sure enjoyed it, and so has the family, but at the same time, it can lead to problems. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that today to help you guys avoid common problems with spending too much time and giving too much attention to your dog, and how that might lead to separation anxiety in some cases. With people being stuck at home, many people working from home, and the world just having changed overall in the last year, our dogs have had access to us in an unprecedented way. And my concern as a dog trainer is that as things start to return to normal, or however you want to term that, once our dogs don't have that same continuous access to us, eventually they're going to start to stress and exhibit signs of what we call separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is a very common problem, and in short, what it means is a dog that stresses in the absence of its people or main person. One thing we need to be cognizant of is keeping our dogs emotionally balanced and emotionally strong. They don't understand COVID, they don't understand lockdowns, they don't understand work from home, they just know that we're home a lot. And while they enjoy that, it's going to be a real rough and bumpy patch for them when we start to go back to our old way of doing things, or maybe not even necessarily our old way of doing things, but starting to leave the house more. So we can start preparing our dogs for that from now, and we should do so. We have to keep in mind that eventually we're going to be going out again, and our dogs aren't going to understand why there's this sudden and dramatic change and why we're not always home. So these are things to keep in mind. You should be leaving your dog a little bit each day, even if it means just walking around on your property, going down the street to the corner, getting in the car, driving to the corner, coming back. Do something to show the dog that you leave the house, the apartment, the condo, whatever it is. Try to set it up. And don't kid yourself, dogs are very, very smart creatures, and they identify patterns very, very well. So if you're going to try and fake your dog out, make the pattern look like the real. And what that means is, if you normally grab your phone and your keys and your mug of coffee on the way to work, please do that. If you grab your purse, if you grab a briefcase, whatever it is you normally grab, your school bag, your rucksack, on the way out, grab it. Try to recreate that. Try to give the dog the impression of what it is that we do when we're normally going out. As a dog trainer, a big part of my job is understanding how a dog views things rather than how we view things, and understanding the importance of setups. So when we're talking about a setup, we're talking about an artificial or made-up scenario, but what we're really doing is trying to recreate the impression of a real scenario. So if someone calls me and says, my dog has trouble walking nicely on a leash on the way to the dog park, then we're going to create a setup. Once the dog has learned to heel, we're going to eventually heel on the way to the dog park over and over and over until the dog has learned to master that skill. And then the dog really can't tell the difference between when we're in training and walking to the dog park and when we're just walking to the dog park for the sake of walking to the dog park. It all blends into one, and that's how obedience works best. But it's not really just for obedience. It's the same thing if you're training a narcotics detection dog to find a specific odor. Eventually, you're going to have to practice with him in his work environment, whether it's an airport, whether it's walking around in the back of a large haul truck, whatever it is. If you don't do that, then the dog doesn't connect work with environment. And what we need to do for our dogs in this specific case with regards to separation anxiety is make our departures and our returns look like normal. If you leave, lock the front door. Start the car, grab your mug of coffee, get the briefcase, the purse, the school bag, the lunch box, whatever it is. Try to recreate it so that it looks like the real thing for your dog, because they're very, very good at identifying when something is not necessarily the real thing, and that will blow up on you in training. And that's a general tip that you can apply to any type of training you're doing with your dog. Separation anxiety means that your dog is anxious in your absence. Your dog is going to stress until you return. Okay, there are a lot of things that we do to influence that in a negative way where most people are not even aware of it. Things you want to watch out for. when you leave the house, don't make a big deal out of it. Think of what it means for the dog to be anxious in your absence. It means that the dog can't stand when you're gone. Now, if you're going to take your dog and already take a dog that's getting emotional when you're leaving, and you're going to make a big deal out of your goodbye, you're just ramping up the dog to have more anxiety when you leave, okay? Same thing when you return. Don't make a big deal out of it. I know you're happy to see your dog. Every day when I get home, I'm happy to see my dog. Sometimes I just walk down the driveway to put out the recycling and come back, and I'm happy to see my dog. And for sure, the dog is dancing around and happy to see me. But here's the thing, I ignore her. I ignore her and I wait until she calms down. Now, that's not the fun thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. Because if you grab your dog and dance around, what you're doing is you're confirming in your dog's mind that getting worked up and waiting for you to arrive home is the right thing to do, because when you arrive home, it is that big explosion. We're trying to teach the dog the opposite, that you returning is actually less exciting than the dog would naturally believe it is. So when you leave and when you come back, treat it like it's nothing. And I promise you, you normally act like it's nothing with the rest of your family. You don't grab everyone else and dance around the house. But for some reason, people think it's the right thing or the smart thing or the fun thing maybe to do with their dog. And it's really not the healthy thing to do with your dog. So when you come and when you go, don't make a big deal out of it. Another very key thing is watch your dog for recovery times, okay? Recovery tells us a lot about how a dog is doing emotionally and if we're going on the right track, if we're walking down the right path or not. So for instance, if your dog does have some separation anxiety and you come home and it takes your dog 20 minutes to stop panting, to stop shaking, to stop pacing around, then ideally, if you start to employ some of these techniques, in a week or two, you might find that it's only 15 minutes or even better, maybe 10 minutes. And over time, we're starting to see faster and faster and faster recoveries. Quicker recoveries are a great sign. It means that the dog is starting to normalize a lot quicker, and it's starting to have a lot less highs and lows and starting to just live in that safe space right in the middle where it's not at the peak and it's not at the valley. If your dog has trouble calming down, or what I call turning off, practice what I call boring returns. Boring returns are exactly that. You return and you're bored. You're not happy to see your dog. You might, on the inside, be feeling it, but you really shouldn't show it to the dog. And this is going to help your dog understand that when you come home, it's just part of the day. And if you really want to ramp it up, do this multiple times. And the more you do it, the easier it gets for the dog. And think about it. If you were going to practice teaching your dog to sit, to give a paw, to fetch, to whatever it is you're going to work on, the more you're going to work on it, the faster your dog is going to hit the finish line and be successful at whatever skill you're developing. Working on separation anxiety isn't any different. So frequent coming and going is actually really, really good for your dog, as long as you're doing it properly, of course. Now, eventually, when you do start leaving for longer periods, whether you're returning to work or school, what have you, start to increase your dog's exercise as well as your dog's mental stimulation each day. The more you can help tap out your dog's excess energy, the calmer your dog is going to be. There's nothing worse than an anxious dog having extra pent-up energy. Okay, we want to help the dog spend that energy so that, are you comfortable yet? So that the dog can just lounge around and relax. Ideally, what we want to see when we come home is that the dog's happy to see us and then the dog just chills out. So help your dog by giving it extra walks, extra time playing fetch, tug, certainly more obedience training, more stimulation in general. If your dog has a place or a go to your crate or mat or whatever it is command, when you return, use that. If your dog has a hard time calming down on his or her own, send your dog there and watch your dog for recovery times. What that will do is just help reinforce to your dog that when you return, it's boring. You're just going to go there and chill out. And you can, in the meantime, go to the washroom, wash up, make yourself a cup of coffee, a glass of juice, water, tea, whatever, a beverage of your choice, let's just say. But basically what you're doing is you're showing the dog that when you return, it's boring. And so you're helping the dog access its off switch to just come down emotionally. Some dogs can do it really well on their own, and if your dog can, great. It's not necessary to send your dog there. But many dogs, the dogs that do really suffer from separation anxiety, don't have access to that, and you have to help them develop it. So if you can send your dog to a target and wait for it to calm down, And as well as I've mentioned, watch for the recovery time so you can see the recovery time is improving little by little. Then definitely utilize that. And finally, at the end of the day, what I'm really after with this and with any type of training is balance. I'm looking for balance. I want my dog to be a healthy and happy, well-balanced dog. So I'm looking for an emotional balance in this case. And what I mean by that is I want a dog, of course, that's happy to see me, that wants to spend time with me, that cares about me and enjoys my company and my affection, because that's what I feel towards my dog. But at the same time, I don't want to give my dog what we call too much of a good thing, where now the dog has trouble living without me and can't function in my absence. I get emails and calls on a daily basis coming from people whose dogs not only bark nonstop in their absence, that's the least of the problems. There's dogs that won't eat when the owners aren't around. So imagine now you go away for a week and your dog doesn't eat for the first 3 days. That's quite dangerous. And dogs that give themselves lick granulomas, go and Google that. That's not a lot of fun. That's when your dog licks at its paws nonstop, and it's really doing that just to kind of appease itself, to pass the time, and ends up with scabs on its paws just from licking constantly. And it's doing so out of stress, usually caused by separation anxiety. And the list goes on and on and on and on in terms of the symptoms that we see, but those are not the problems. Those are truly the symptoms. The problem is separation anxiety. So let's help our dogs be strong throughout this whole ordeal where we're all home a lot more. Let's enjoy our dog's company. Let's allow them to enjoy our company, but let's do it in a balanced way where our dogs still have that off switch, still have their emotional strength and independence, and feel good without us. And at the same time, we all get to enjoy one another's company. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.